You smiled at the right times. You listened, remembered, supported. You stayed soft. You were patient. You forgave things you probably shouldn't have. You gave more chances than he deserved. And still, you were left unread, unseen, unloved, like a book no one bothers to finish. Let's say it now, out loud, with no sugarcoating. Being the nice girl doesn't mean you get chosen. In fact, it often means you get overlooked. Because in a world addicted to extremes, to drama, to chasing what seems just out of reach, being good, being kind, being consistent is mistaken for being boring. And you know what's worse? You were taught to believe that your softness was your power, that if you just showed him how deeply you could care, how loyal you could be, how low you could bend yourself to fit inside his storms, he would see your worth. And maybe, just maybe, and stay. But he didn't. Because here's the brutal truth nobody told you. Men don't fall for nice. They fall for real. And real doesn't always look nice. Real sets boundaries. Real says no. Real walks away when she's not met at her level. Real doesn't audition for love like it's a job. She is the job. She doesn't get chosen, she chooses. But you weren't raised to be real, were you? You were raised to be palatable, to be easy to love, easy to handle, quiet enough not to disrupt, but loud enough to be noticed, trained, like a songbird, to stay in a cage and still sing sweetly for the one who might never let you fly. And now, here you are, confused, angry at yourself, angry at men, angry at a system that told you if you just loved harder, you'd be loved back. If you just gave more, he'd finally stay. But love isn't a prize for good behavior. It's a mirror. And he didn't choose you because you weren't choosing yourself. And before you say, "But I do love myself," stop. Because self-love isn't bubble baths and journaling. Self-love is standards. Self-love is walking away from anything that requires you to abandon your soul to stay. And deep down, you know it. You felt it. That sick feeling in your stomach every time you pretended something didn't bother you.
Do you ever feel like someone finally sees the part of you you've always hidden? Here, you don't have to hide anymore. You're safe now. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can keep walking this path together. Thank you.
Every time you said yes, when your gut screamed no. Every time you watched him chase a woman who gave him less but demanded more. And you thought, what am I doing wrong? I'll tell you. You've been taught to perform love, not embody it. You've been performing the idea of the good woman, nurturing, loyal, low maintenance, endlessly forgiving, hoping that being less would make someone finally see you as more. But men don't stay with nice. They stay with truth. And that's where this begins. Because until you dare to unlearn this performance, to rip off the smile that hides the ache, to stop playing the role of the understanding woman who always waits, you'll keep reliving the same pain in different bodies. You'll keep being almost enough in someone else's story instead of being everything in your own. So let's go there. Let's confront this head on. The lie, the longing, the legacy of women told to disappear in order to be loved. Because you deserve more than to be tolerated. You deserve to be chosen with eyes wide open, not for how little space you take up, but for the fire you dare to keep lit, even when no one claps for your warmth. And to get there, we have to burn something. Not yourself, not your kindness, but the belief that your goodness is what makes you lovable, because it's not your niceness that keeps men away. It's your absence. Not the absence of effort, but the absence of you. The real you. The messy you. The untamed, unfiltered, fully alive woman who doesn't beg to be noticed because she's too busy seeing herself. He didn't ignore you because you were nice. He ignored you because you were invisible. And maybe, just maybe, it's time you stopped being so easy to ignore. There's a kind of ache you carry that doesn't scream. It doesn't bleed. It doesn't shatter rooms or ruin dinners. It whispers. It hides inside your routines. It camouflages inside your strength. You wake up, brush your hair, answer texts, send emails, water plants. You do all the things that make you seem okay, but you're not okay, and you don't know how to say it, not even to yourself. Because when you were growing up, you learned something dangerous, that your pain is less important than your usefulness, that if you cry too loudly, people leave, that being too much is a risk, and being just enough is a strategy. And now, decades later, you're still stuck in the performance, still auditioning for love by being easy to handle. So you shrink, you accommodate, you become adaptable to the point of vanishing. You contort yourself into whatever version of womanhood you think he'll stay for. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to ghost yourself. You say things like, "It's fine," even when it's not. You forgive him before he even apologizes. You defend him to your friends. You delete the message you wanted to send because you're scared of looking needy. You stop asking for what you need, not because you don't have needs, but because you've learned that having needs makes you harder to love. So you overfunction. You become the therapist, the planner, the peacekeeper, the girl who gets it, the one who doesn't make a fuss, the one who never makes him feel bad, even when he's the one hurting you. And when he leaves, you don't scream, you collapse. Silently, you blame yourself. Was I too emotional? Too available? Too easy? Too boring? No. You were just too real in all the wrong directions. You were giving from an empty cup. You were showing up for someone who wasn't even looking. You were hoping that your willingness to love would be enough to teach him how to love you back. But the truth, he wasn't ignoring you because you weren't enough. He was ignoring you because you were trying to be everything he wanted, and nothing you were. You weren't loud with your truth. You were loud with your loyalty. You weren't fierce with your boundaries. You were fierce with your forgiveness. And somewhere in the middle of all that devotion, you forgot how to be devoted to you. There's something haunting about that, isn't there? To be the woman who's always there, the one who answers the late-night call, the one who holds his pain but hides her own, the one who stays even when he disappears emotionally, the one who never asks, "What about me?" Because deep down, she's scared the answer will be, "You don't matter." That's the quiet grief you carry. The grief of being replaceable in someone's life you would have rebuilt your entire world for. You're not heartbroken over him. You're heartbroken over what you thought loving him would finally fix inside of you. Because for a while, he made you feel seen. And that illusion, that brief, fleeting sense of being chosen, was enough to override all the signs that said, "This isn't safe, this isn't whole, this isn't love." But you stayed, and not because you're weak. No, you stayed because you're wired for hope. You stayed because you've always been the one to try a little harder, love a little longer, carry a little more weight than you should. But who carries you, love? Who shows up when you've run out of sunshine and strength? Who holds space for the nights you stare at the ceiling, wondering what the hell is wrong with you? Who looks at you the way you look at everyone else, with softness, reverence, hunger? You've been everyone's safe place, but you don't feel safe inside your own heart. That's the cruel irony. You're the woman who makes people feel calm, steady, grounded. And yet, inside your own skin, there's a storm you can't name. A restlessness, a rage, a sadness that lingers in the bones, and the world doesn't see it. Because you're so good at performing stability, so good at smiling through the ache, so good at pretending that being nice makes it all okay. But it's not okay. It's not okay that you have to apologize for needing more. It's not okay that your silence is mistaken for peace. It's not okay that your love becomes a blueprint for someone else's healing, while you slowly break apart in the background. You are not a rehabilitation center for broken men. You are not a soft place for boys to land while they figure out how to become the men they promised you they'd be. And still, even now, you carry the guilt of saying that out loud. Because what if naming your pain makes you ungrateful? What if having standards makes you difficult? What if walking away makes you selfish? No, you have swallowed too much of your own voice trying to make love work in places it was never meant to live. And maybe it's time you let it out. Let the scream rise. Let the rage speak. Let the grief wail into the night and echo through every part of you that still believes love means disappearing. Because the truth is, you're not grieving him. You're grieving the version of you that thought love meant sacrifice. You're mourning all the parts of yourself you buried to make room for someone who never truly arrived. And that is the deepest betrayal of all. Not that he left, but that you kept abandoning yourself, hoping he wouldn't. You thought he was the lesson. You thought he came into your life to show you your worth, or maybe to prove that you were still unworthy. You thought this was just another story of loving the wrong person, another heartbreak, another reminder that you're always too much or not enough. But what if I told you he wasn't the lesson? You were. You were the revelation. You were the truth that never got revealed because you kept hiding it behind your performance. You kept editing yourself to fit someone who didn't have the eyes to see you. The real lesson? It's not about him. It's about the part of you that keeps confusing love with endurance. It's about the little girl inside you, the one who learned way too early that love has to be earned, that being good meant being quiet, that being wanted meant being useful, that being loved meant being whatever they needed, even if it meant not being you. That girl is still alive inside of you. And she's tired. She's tired of being the bridge to everyone else's healing. Tired of being the pause button on her own joy. Tired of making herself smaller just to be held in arms that never stay. And she doesn't need another man. She needs you. She needs you to finally say, I see you. I'm not abandoning you anymore. Because the real heartbreak here isn't romantic. It's existential. It's spiritual. It's the pain of being disconnected from your own self, your own voice, your own body, your own truth. That's the truth no one talks about. That's the grief beneath the grief. You didn't lose him. You lost you trying to keep him. You lost your boundaries. You lost your intuition. You lost your radiance. And now Now the universe is asking you to come back home. Not to a house, not to a man, but to the woman who remembers who the hell she is. Even when no one claps, even when no one chooses her, even when she stands alone. Because here's what they never told you. Love is not a reward. It is a reflection. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you believe you are worthy of. And if your worth is still tied to how good you can be for someone else, you'll keep handing your heart to people who don't know how to hold it. You'll keep loving like a transaction, hoping that if you give enough, they'll give back. But that's not love. That's a bargain. That's emotional capitalism. That's survival mode dressed in romance. Real love doesn't require you to abandon your needs. Real love doesn't ask you to bleed out just to prove you're safe. Real love begins the moment you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. I know that sounds cliché, but I'm not talking about spa days and affirmations. I'm talking about a spiritual reckoning, a remembering of the woman you were before the world told you who to be, of the fire you had before you were taught to extinguish it for someone else's comfort, of the truth you buried to keep peace in relationships that were never built to hold your depth. The truth is, you are not here to be convenient. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to be the side character in someone else's growth arc. You are here to burn, to rise, to take up space in rooms that tremble under the weight of your wholeness. You are here to disappoint the people who only loved the version of you that served their story. You are here to disrupt. And yes, it will be lonely. Yes, you will lose people. But the ones you lose when you stop shrinking were never yours to begin with. Because the truth is, your niceness wasn't the problem. Your emptiness was. You kept giving what you didn't have. Kept loving without being rooted in self. Kept choosing men who mirrored your own forgetfulness. And life, in its brutal kindness, kept sending you the same lesson in different bodies, whispering, "Wake up," not to them, to you. Because this whole time, you thought the struggle was about being enough for someone else. But the real question is, have you ever been enough for you? Not in a performative way, not in a curated, filtered, presentable way, but in the raw, ugly, sacred truth of your being. Do you look in the mirror and say, "I will not betray you again," because that's what this was always about? Not love, not men, but the invisible contract you signed with your own soul, and how many times you've broken it to keep others comfortable. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. And you were asking before you ever asked yourself. The real healing? It's not about changing how men see you. It's about finally seeing yourself clearly enough that you'd never again settle for being unseen. There comes a moment in every woman's life when the mirror no longer flatters her. Not the one on the wall, but the one inside her mind. The mirror that shows her not just her face, but her patterns, her survival, her shadows. And when that mirror cracks, it doesn't ask for permission. It just breaks. And suddenly, everything you thought made you lovable starts to look like manipulation in prettier clothes. Your sweetness, sometimes a disguise for fear. Your forgiveness, a cover for abandonment issues. Your patience, a rehearsed pause, not peace. Your understanding, an avoidance of conflict so deep you'd rather self-destruct than speak your truth. You've been calling it love. But what if it was ego? What if your niceness was never really about being kind, but about being chosen? What if every time you gave more than you had, stayed longer than you should, or silenced your truth to keep the peace? It wasn't compassion. It was control. Control disguised as devotion. Because deep down, you thought, if I do everything right, he won't leave. If I become everything he needs, I'll be irreplaceable. If I love hard enough, I won't be abandoned again. But that's not love. That's trauma choreography. That's little you trying to rewrite the story of not being wanted. That's survival. And maybe that's the hardest thing to admit, that you were never just being good. You were performing safety. You weren't being soft because it's who you are. You were being soft because you were scared to be real. Because real means saying, I won't tolerate this. I deserve more. I'm not responsible for healing you. I choose me. But to say those things, you'd have to let go of the illusion. The illusion that if you're good enough, you'll never be abandoned. And that illusion, that's the real addiction. You've been addicted to being chosen, addicted to proving your worth through self-sacrifice, addicted to men who reflect your unworthiness back to you just so you can keep trying to heal it through them. But what if I told you, the real problem isn't that men keep choosing someone else. It's that you keep choosing someone who won't choose you, because it allows you to stay in the wound, to stay in the story, to stay in the identity of the almost loved woman. And if you healed, if you actually saw your worth and stopped begging for it, then who would you be? That's the question your ego is terrified of. Because healing means the death of your narrative, the death of the belief that your value comes from being useful, the death of the part of you that needs to suffer to feel significant. And the ego hates death, so it clings, it rationalizes, it says, he's just scared of intimacy. He's not ready, but he loves me deep down. I'm not like other women. I understand him. If I just hang on a little longer, but you're not hanging on to him. You're hanging on to the fantasy of what loving him could fix inside of you. And that fantasy, it's killing you. Because while you wait for him to realize your worth, you forget to realize it yourself. You let your ego convince you that playing the martyr is noble, that sacrificing yourself is love, that losing yourself is loyalty. But listen to me. Loyalty to your own self-abandonment is not a virtue. It's a trap, and it's time you saw it for what it is. Because the truth is, the most dangerous cage is the one you built yourself. The cage of being the cool girl, the one who doesn't ask for much, the one who never makes things hard, the one who plays it chill while her heart breaks in silence. You thought that would make you lovable, but all it did was make you a placeholder, a warm body, a temporary comfort, a convenient silence in a world full of noise. And that's not what you came here for. You didn't come to Earth to be an accessory to someone else's journey. You didn't come to dim your soul to fit inside someone's idea of manageable. You didn't come to master self-abandonment in the name of love. You came to be truth, to walk into rooms unedited, to speak with a voice that doesn't tremble when it asks for more, to love from fullness, not from lack, to be so rooted in your self-worth that anyone who doesn't rise to meet it fades out like background noise. But first, the ego must fall, and it will fight. It will cling to the narrative. It will try to convince you that letting go means losing everything. But the only thing you'll lose is your cage. And in its place, you'll find you. The you who doesn't need to be chosen to feel enough. The you who can love deeply without disappearing. The you who isn't terrified of being alone. Because alone no longer means unloved. You will finally see it was never about them. It was about the part of you still waiting for someone else to make you whole. But wholeness is not granted. It is remembered. And now is the time to remember. There's a silence that comes after the storm. Not peace, not yet, but space. A terrifying, holy space where everything you thought was keeping you safe has been stripped away, and all that's left is you, raw and awake. It's quiet here, and that's what makes it unbearable. Because now, there's no one else to blame, no man to chase, no fantasy to escape into, no story left to cling to. It's just you, staring at your reflection with no makeup, no mask, no performance. And for the first time, you ask yourself a different question. What if it's not about being loved? What if it's about being real? That's the turning point. Not when he leaves, not when you cry on the bathroom floor, not even when you say, "I deserve better." The real turning point is when you stop waiting to be rescued and realize no one is coming. Not because you're unworthy, but because it was never their job. Your healing, not his responsibility. Your worth, not his to define. Your truth, not his to validate. You've been outsourcing your power for so long, it feels foreign to hold it. You've been blaming men, blaming timing, blaming the world. But deep down, you know, you've been choosing this, not because you're broken, but because somewhere along the line, you learned that suffering equals value. That if you could endure more pain, carry more weight, prove your loyalty through silence, you'd finally be rewarded with love. But that was never love. That was survival dressed as romance. That was codependence in a pretty dress. That was the echo of a childhood wound, asking to be seen. And now you see it. Now you see that you've been the common denominator in every story where you abandoned yourself. Now you see that being nice was often a form of manipulation, an attempt to control the outcome, to win affection, to be needed. Now you see that waiting for someone to choose you was a way to avoid choosing yourself. Because choosing yourself, that's terrifying. It means saying no to breadcrumbs. It means walking away from almost love. It means sitting in the aching silence of your own becoming, without distractions, without promises, without guarantees. But it also means you're free. Free from the narrative that love has to hurt. Free from the belief that your softness is weakness. Free from the illusion that someone else holds the keys to your worth. And in that freedom, something shifts. You start to see love differently, not as a prize, not as a savior, but as a reflection of how you treat yourself when no one is watching. Because real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that nourishes, the kind that holds you in your full aliveness, doesn't come when you're begging to be chosen. It comes when you're too busy becoming the woman who no longer flinches at her own power, becoming the woman who can hold her truth even when it makes others uncomfortable, becoming the woman who doesn't chase, doesn't convince, doesn't apologize for being the storm and the calm, both. And that woman? She doesn't ask, why didn't he choose me? She asks, why was I choosing him? She doesn't wonder what she did wrong. She wonders how she abandoned herself and makes damn sure she never does it again. Because she knows now, love without self is just longing. And longing will lie to you. It will whisper that you're unlovable unless someone is looking at you with hungry eyes. It will convince you to betray your boundaries just to feel wanted. It will seduce you into becoming a shape that fits their need, instead of a force that holds her own. But that's not who you are anymore. Not after this. You've seen too much. You've cracked too deeply. You've tasted the bitterness of almost love one too many times. And now you're ready. Ready to stop shrinking. Ready to stop explaining your standards. Ready to stop grieving men who never had the capacity to hold you. Ready to say, I choose me. Fully, wildly, without apology. Because here's what they never told you. The moment you stop betraying yourself is the moment everything starts to change. You begin attracting differently, not because you've become prettier or smarter or more desirable, but because your energy is no longer desperate. It's sovereign. You walk into rooms not asking, do they like me? But asking, does this align with who I've become? You don't audition, you embody, you don't chase, you anchor. And from that place, that rooted, fiery, unwavering place, love will come, not to complete you, but to meet you, to rise to the level of the woman who no longer plays small just to feel safe, to honor the soul of someone who burned every lie just to stand in her truth. That's where you are now. And there's no going back. You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel whole. You don't rise from the ashes with a smile and perfect skin and a perfect caption that says, I found myself. No. You crawl, you ache, you bleed silence. And then something inside you begins to stir. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not a movie scene. It's quieter than that, more sacred. It's the sound of your soul clearing its throat after years of being ignored. It's the moment you stop checking your phone to see if he's finally realized what he lost, and instead, you check in with yourself. Am I showing up for me today? It's the moment you put down the idea of who you're supposed to be and finally pick up the pieces of who you really are. Not the polished version, not the pleasing version, but the one who's felt it all and still chose to live. This is what rebirth really looks like. Not some phoenix moment for Instagram, but the day you walk into a room and realize you're not shrinking anymore. The day your no doesn't come with an apology. The day you feel peace in solitude instead of panic. The day you don't flinch when you say, this is what I need. Because now you know. You were never too much. You were just in rooms that required you to dim. And now, you're done dimming. You've tasted your own power. Not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet power that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to abandon her again. You start to walk differently, not because the world changed, but because you did. You don't chase closure. You don't ask for crumbs. You don't settle for almosts. You become a woman with a center, a woman who is no longer addicted to potential because she's finally met her own, a woman who doesn't beg to be chosen because she's already chosen herself, again and again, in the dark. You become the kind of woman who scares men who only know how to love broken things. Because you're not broken anymore. You're whole, not perfect, not polished, but whole. And that wholeness, it's magnetic. Because it says, I don't need you to complete me. I need you to meet me. It says, if you come into my life, come correct, or don't come at all. It says, I'm not afraid to be alone. I'm afraid of abandoning my truth ever again. And when you speak from that place, the world shifts. You stop attracting people who want to fix you. You start attracting people who honor your fire. You stop being a soft place to land for men still running from themselves. You become a mirror, the kind that doesn't lie, the kind that reflects their own becoming. You stop performing. You start embodying. You stop pleasing. You start choosing. You stop waiting. You start walking. And as you walk, something wild begins to bloom inside you. Something you've never fully felt before. It's not just self-love, it's self-return. The woman who once cried in silence because she was too much, she's now a force of nature, untamed, unapologetic, unshrinkable. The woman who once begged for breadcrumbs, she now dines at tables she built from scratch and knows her hunger is holy. The woman who once thought love meant sacrificing herself, she now knows love, if it costs you, isn't love. You begin to build differently now. Relationships, routines, boundaries, all from this new place of truth. You no longer decorate cages and call them homes. You no longer mistake chaos for chemistry. You no longer fear walking away because you finally trust your own feet. And in this new world, something beautiful happens. You stop needing to be understood by others because you finally understand yourself. You stop chasing peace because you are peace. You stop aching to be seen because you've never looked more clearly into your own soul than now. This is the rebirth, not the beginning, not the end, but the middle, the sacred, powerful middle, where you are no longer who you were, but not quite yet who you're becoming. And somehow, that's enough, because now you know you were never broken. You were just buried, under expectations, under shame, under stories that were never yours. And now you rise, not to prove, not to perform, but simply because that's what light does when it remembers who it is. It rises. You've carried so much for so long. Too many quiet betrayals, too many unfinished endings, too many versions of yourself you had to kill just to be loved by someone who never really saw you. And yet, you're still here. That means something. It means the fire inside you was never fully extinguished. It means the part of you that knew you deserved more, knew love wasn't meant to be pain, knew your soul was not created to beg. That part of you never died. It just waited, patiently, painfully, until now. Because now, you're not pretending anymore. You're not asking for permission to be whole. You're not negotiating your value in spaces too small to hold it. You're standing at the edge of a life you no longer want, and the one that's been waiting for you. This is the threshold. And I'm not here to push you. I'm not here to sell you healing like it's a trend. I'm just here to whisper, it's time. Time to stop making excuses for people who cannot meet you. Time to stop bleeding just to prove you're alive. Time to stop shrinking yourself for a love that feels like starvation. It's time to make a different kind of choice. Not a louder one, not a sexier one, a truer one. One that says, I will not abandon myself again. Not for him, not for anyone, not even for the ghost of the girl I used to be. One that says, I choose peace over potential, truth over attention, depth over approval. One that says, I choose me, in full. Not the curated version, not the half-healed one, the real one. The one who knows how to be both soft and unbreakable. The one who walks away with tears in her eyes and her head held high. The one who no longer needs to be chosen because she is already home in herself. That version of you, she's not a fantasy. She's real. She's ready. And she's waiting for one final act of courage, for you to step out of your story and into your soul. So no, I won't tell you what to do. You already know. I'm just here to remind you of the choice that was always yours. Stay asleep in someone else's dream of you, or wake up in your own. And if you listen closely, beyond the doubt, beyond the fear, beyond the ache, you'll hear something powerful rising in you. A voice, your voice. And it will say, not as a question, but as a vow, never again will I disappear inside love. Then silence, and then everything begins.